Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the content patch for the 8th of March 2013. My name is TotalBiscuit with today's gaming news and comment. Coming up in the show, Fraudulent Steam keys cost Natural Selection 2 developer Unknown Worlds $30,000, more SimCity woes as EA disables cheetah speed to lighten server load, Age of Empires 2 HD has been announced, and Nvidia comments on performance issues within Tomb Raider PC. Unknown Worlds, the San Francisco-based indie development company responsible for Natural Selection 2, has put out a mass email and statement on the subject of fraudulent Steam keys that apparently have cost them over $30,000 in chargeback fees. They have stated that 1,341 Steam keys were recently deactivated by Valve that were purchased with stolen credit cards and then distributed to various third-party key-selling discount websites. The company claims to have lost $45 for each of these illegal transactions and has warned consumers against purchasing keys from unknown third-party websites. In their statement, Unknown Worlds said that the only two official places to buy Natural Selection 2 are through Steam or through their own website. If you see Natural Selection 2 available anywhere else, like the many sites out there that sell Steam keys at a discount, then you are not buying it from us, and there is no way to know if that key is legitimate. They went on to clarify that they don't know how exactly these sites obtain their Steam keys, but it is likely that many of these keys are acquired using stolen credit cards. Now, this is a real kick in the teeth for an indie dev. I mean, $30,000 is a lot of money for a small developer. It's a lot of money for any individual, definitely a lot of money for a small developer. Obviously, it's the kind of thing that a bigger company could write off and you wouldn't be so concerned about it, but this is kind of a big deal. Now, chargebacks have been mentioned a number of times over the past couple of months, particularly in relation to SimCity and acquiring refunds, and I think it's about time we talk about third-party key sellers as well as chargebacks, because I feel there's a lot of misconceptions going on with these particular subjects. So let's start with third-party key sellers. Now, what do I mean by a third-party key seller? I'm essentially talking about any third-party site that is selling keys, whether it be Steam keys, Origin keys, Uplay, and so on and so forth, and is doing so at a discount. Now, what this usually means is they must have acquired these Steam keys from somewhere. They certainly didn't acquire them from the publisher. There's no way that the publisher would allow some small third-party website to directly undercut Steam. I mean, the notion is actually ridiculous. So if you were to go on a site like that and, say, find a brand new game at a significantly cheaper price than you would find on a site like, say, Steam, Origin, Gamersgate, and so on and so forth, then you can safely say that this was not acquired in a legitimate fashion. Now, there's a couple of ways that this is done. This is what I know from having seen these sites operate over a course of a number of years. These sites have not just sprung up overnight. This business has actually been running for quite some time. Now, the first way of doing this, which is the most legitimate way, is to buy cheaper copies from the Russian regions and then sell them to Western customers. Now, what happens in these regions is more often than not, cheaper copies of the game are sold in order to combat a massive amount of piracy. You're also selling it in a region where income and just the amount of disposable cash that people have is much less. So a lot more people will resort to piracy because they can't afford video games. So that's one way of them combating that. Now, this is currently legitimate for the most part in that it's not going to get you into trouble, at least until companies decide to start cracking down on it, which is quite likely. This is one of the main reasons that region locking exists. Now, region locking is a bit of a dirty word amongst most people in the gaming industry. They don't like it. The reason they don't like it is because it can lead to some predatory sales practices within certain regions, and it also means that for no apparent reason whatsoever, you are prevented from buying and playing games from other countries, even if those countries have released them maybe months in advance. One recent example of this was Scribblenauts. No one really knew why that was delayed for so long in Europe, even though it had been localized and was perfectly playable in English. I mean, the bloody thing was out in America, for God's sake. And that's just one example of region locking. There's a lot more. It even goes on with PC games, which I guess most people don't really realize unless, of course, they're in such regions. There was some controversy recently about some Eastern Bloc gamers being unable to play any version that wasn't in Russian, which they didn't actually want to do at all. So this happens. It really, really does. Now, I imagine if this becomes any more of a problem, they will start to just lock down your Steam account and say, nope, you can't redeem this code. This is a Russian code, and so on and so forth. They don't seem to want to really do that yet, but it will get to that point if this becomes more of an issue. Now, the other ways, of course, of acquiring those keys are certainly somewhat less legal, and I'm talking about directly stealing physical copies. Now, from what I've seen from a lot of these sites, you do get scans of a serial code from the manual. Most of the time they seem to be in a foreign language, most of them in Russian, but some of them in English, which indicates to me that some shipments of these games could actually be stolen. And then, of course, there's the idea of buying a lot of digital keys using stolen credit cards. In this case, what ended up happening to the Unknown Worlds guys is they had the Humble store set up to sell keys directly from their website, and then that was exploited with a large number of stolen credit cards to acquire a great deal of keys, which were then, of course, sold on. With Steam itself, it's a little bit difficult to buy keys en masse and sell them, but with other websites whereby you have to actually get a Steam key, I imagine it's quite a bit easier to acquire these keys en masse. Now, you might ask, well, which retailers are legitimate? Well, I can give you a list. I wouldn't say this is a complete list, but I'd say that anything that isn't on this list is something that you should at least do a little bit of research of. Currently, I would say on PC, the places where you should be buying keys are Steam, Gamersgate, Greenman Gaming, Gamefly, GameStop, Amazon.com, GOG, Origin, Indievania, IndieCity, Little Indie, Beamdog, Desura, Uplay, Game Digital, and Get Games Go. That's pretty much all of the retailers that I know of that I can confirm are legit. That is not a complete list. There are some smaller distributors that deal with a lot of niche stuff or underground, just indie titles in general. But what you should generally think about is if a site is selling Steam keys at significantly lower than anywhere else, the chances are those are not legitimate Western Steam keys. They had to come from somewhere, and the publisher didn't suddenly just turn around and say, oh yeah, a random site that was set up 7 days ago, yeah, we'll totally give you a 50% discount on this latest AAA title. That simply does not happen. And it's a standard rule, something you should be looking at. If something sounds too good to be true, then yes, it probably is, especially on the internet. And yeah, you can get burned, but not only do you get burned, you end up burning companies that you like. You know, you want to support a company like Unknown Worlds that makes an amazing PC multiplayer game like Natural Selection 2, well, try and buy the key from a legitimate, well-known retailer rather than a third-party site. The problem is, of course, it's difficult to know which is a legit retailer and which isn't. As I said, my list is by no means complete. There are no doubt other retailers, there are no doubt region-specific retailers that I haven't been able to mention there. That's just a list of the stuff that I know. So it can be difficult. Yeah, definitely. There's no question about that. But unfortunately, we as consumers have to be diligent. As a result of this business model, a company that I like a great deal and has done very well for PC gamers and has made a great game just got screwed really hard. And this is not EA we're talking about here. This is a company that could take significant financial damage from this kind of behavior. So please watch yourself when it comes to this kind of thing. This is technically, if you think about it, worse than piracy. The reason it's worse than piracy is this actively costs the developer money. This kind of thing happens. If this is where some of these keys are coming from, then they get hit by chargebacks. Now, I said I was going to talk about chargebacks. Let me tell you what a chargeback actually is. This is something that's been touted by many people as a way to get your money back. Now, there was a screenshot tweeted at me yesterday over and over again, which supposedly claimed and proved that EA was anti-consumer and that EA would be banning accounts that were trying to get a refund. Now, if you actually read that screenshot, what you will see is that the consumer threatened a chargeback. Now, a chargeback is actually against the terms of service of pretty much every digital distributor on the planet. That includes Steam. According to the Steam support website, Valve considers credit card and PayPal chargebacks, regardless of when the transaction occurred, as payment fraud. And this can result in the suspension of your Steam account. Origin considers the same, in fact pretty much every company does. And this is why. You've just seen why. You've just seen the evidence why. Because of the amount of damage that can be done to them. Not to mention, I have to imagine that if banks are repeatedly getting chargeback requests for a company, then they probably don't want to deal with that company anymore. there are serious questions raised as to this company's legitimacy. That's pretty bad news. Chargeback is in place as essentially a step before legal action, to get your money back when a company's being dishonest. It's a consumer protection method. The thing is that when you do a chargeback, you are essentially declaring war. It's figuratively the tactical nuclear option, before the full-on ICBM of legal action. It says, I do not want to deal with you anymore, I want my money back, and I am going to force you to give it back to me using the credit card company, at which point the company will refuse to do business with you anymore. Please, for the love of God, do not exploit the chargeback system because it will come back to bite you in the ass in a very real way. It is against, as I said, every terms of service you will find on regular digital retailers. It is a very bad idea to do unless you are absolutely certain. Now, EA has come out and said that they will not, in fact, be suspending accounts for refund requests, but in the terms of service, as Valve's is and many others, they are saying no. You cannot charge back. If you charge back, we reserve the right to ban your account. As regards to EA's actual refund policy on Origin, well, that's a different matter entirely. And we can talk a little bit about the continued issues with SimCity, well, right now. So, it's kind of getting a little bit tiring to talk about this, but the nonsense continues with SimCity, and the launch day disaster rolls on with many more crazy things happening. So, an update on the current situation. Amazon.com pulled SimCity's download version from the store for a while, citing server issues. It is now available to buy once again. However, there is a large note at the bottom of the page that says many customers are having issues connecting to the SimCity servers. EA is actively working to resolve these issues, but at this time, we do not know when the issue will be fixed. Please visit help.eae.com for further information. So, the actual download version was unavailable on Amazon for quite some time. I think it was about 6 or 7 hours. It is now available to buy once again. Really don't know why they popped it back up so quickly. I would imagine they took it down because they were sick of getting refund requests. They haven't done anything about the review section where there's over 1,000 one-star ratings on this thing. I can't imagine they will do anything about it, honestly, because there's a fairly legit reason to give a game 1 star, and that's because you can't bloody play it. Yeah, that's fairly legitimate. Amongst other pieces of news, EA disabled non-critical gameplay features earlier today, which included leaderboards and achievements, and then 3 hours later, hotfixed the game to disable cheetah speed, which is the maximum speed available in-game, leaving only turtle and llama, which is slow and medium. Now, those of you who've ever played a SimCity game, cheetah speed is a lifesaver because it, well, allows your city to run at a faster speed, which means that you can get stuff done quicker. The disabling of this is one of the most extreme changes I have ever seen to a video game at any point. I mean, it basically makes the game way more boring, and they're doing it because their servers can't handle things going any faster than that. And that is absurd. That's unprecedented, I think. I mean, I haven't heard of anything as extreme as that. I mean, maybe delaying the real money auction house in Diablo 3 could be constituted as that extreme, but I don't think so. I mean, think about it for a second. You slow Diablo 3 down by 2/3, then yeah, you'd probably get people to be pretty pissed by that as well. And at least SimCity, I suppose, isn't so reliant on speed, but even then, it's absolutely ridiculous. And of course, the final thing is that Polygon, who I think are actually getting into a little bit of nerd baiting now, honestly, have updated their review of SimCity again and reduced the score down to 4 out of 10. Now, they've done this once before. They reduced their 9.5 down to an 8, and now they've reduced it down to a 4. I don't know how far this can keep going on, but yeah, it's getting pretty damn silly. This will no doubt go down in history as one of the most botched launches of all time, and of course is a prime example of why always-on DRM is a bad thing indeed. Well, here's a little bit of good news for you for once. What a miserable day it's been so far in the news, but Age of Empires 2 HD is heading to Steam in April, which is a $20 version of the rather venerable strategy game. It includes all Age of Empires 2 content, as well as a competitive online multiplayer mode, which of course the game had previously, but one assumes now uses the Steam matchmaking system in order to find games. and improvements to texture quality as well as full widescreen support and so on and so forth. The HD port is being handled by Hidden Path, who have been doing quite a lot for Valve recently. In fact, they're of course responsible for CSGO as well as the rather excellent Defense Grid. Steam are being sneaky little buggers on this particular pre-order because they're giving you 10% off, as well as 4 days worth of early access to the game. Now that really is a sneaky little strategy. Yeah, indeed. There's also a 4-pack available, so that's 4 for the price of 3, which would take the price down to around $15 or your regional equivalent. It's interesting that we're seeing an HD version of a PC game. This is not something that we see all that often. Mostly consoles have been handling the HD packs and HD re-releases over the past couple of years. Some games I actually would have been very happy to see on PC, but then again, you've also got to bear in mind that a lot of these HD versions were already high definition on PC anyway. HD really is only a term for a standardized resolution of 720p or 1080p. When it comes to PC, we've had higher resolutions than that for a great deal of time, and our games have run in higher resolution. As well as the fact that we've had all sorts of texture mods and the ability to just reskin your game and so on and so forth. And I'm kind of glad to see this making a comeback. I mean, it's a good game, it's still got an active multiplayer scene, and the notion of playing this game again with some improvements here and there would be quite nice. I think probably the weakest part of this game is gonna be the animation quality. Interface-wise, it's not bad, and it looks like they have improved the texture quality quite significantly based on the trailer, so it's definitely not an ugly game by any stretch of the imagination, but the animation quality definitely lets it down. It's still a pretty old game, and I very much doubt they've made any improvements on that whatsoever, but I mean, why the hell would I not recommend Age of Empires 2? I mean, are you kidding me? That was an absolute classic. So of all the games they could have brought back with an HD remake, then I'm kind of glad that it was that one. Let's see if we can get Master of Orion 2 HD now. Now that I would pay for. And finally, Nvidia have spoken on the issue of Tomb Raider performance for GeForce cards. Now, it is of course well known that the game itself was optimized for AMD devices, especially considering that it had the Tress FX technology, the first game of its kind to actually use this particular piece of physics-based wizardry. But more details are beginning to emerge as to the circumstances of the PC version and just how much involvement Nvidia managed to get with it before its release. Nvidia's Andrew Burns comments that we are aware of performance and stability issues with GeForce GPUs running Tomb Raider with maximum settings. Unfortunately, Nvidia didn't receive final game code until this past weekend, which substantially decreased stability, image quality, and performance over a build we were previously provided. We are working closely with Crystal Dynamics to address and resolve all game issues as quickly as possible. Now, that's the initial statement that they made, but what's interesting is that he also said Nvidia can't, quote, magic up a fix without some help from Crystal Dynamics, and that the developer will need to make code changes on their end to fix the issues on GeForce GPUs as well. Curiouser and curiouser. There's a murky world, folks, when it comes down to graphics card manufacturers. And there's a constant arms race going on between the two, as we're well aware, and that arms race is good for the consumer, except when games go into exclusive deals with specific manufacturers and deny access to the competitor. Now, I'm going to be honest here, I don't know how much of this actually goes on. It's hard to say. Without specific companies coming out and directly accusing the other, which they don't seem to ever do, it's hard to know exactly who is responsible for what. Whether or not it was just a legitimate mistake, or whether or not there was some actual malicious activity going on, whereby the game was coded in such a way as to deliberately not run well on a competitor's hardware. Now, it seems highly unlikely that a significant amount of that would be happening. The reason being that developers, if they have any bloody sense, shouldn't allow it, especially bearing in mind that if you really want a game on a PC, there are only two alternatives, AMD cards or Nvidia cards. So why on earth would you shut out one side of the PC gaming market in order to benefit the other? How much money could a graphics card manufacturer really offer you to do that? Or indeed, was this done behind the scenes? Were there changes made that Crystal Dynamics were not fully made aware of? One way or the other, it's safe to say that some shenanigans have been going on, whether it be through ignorance or stupidity, or whether it be borderline industrial espionage. To me, it just all seems a little bit too convenient that the first product involving a new AMD technology by the name of TressFX would just so happen to not work particularly well on Nvidia cards. I've commented before that TressFX pretty much halves your frame rate on a high-end card, and there are also crash issues involving tessellation and exclusive full-screen mode on GeForce 600 based cards. This is not good at all. This is something, of course, that should be sorted out. And I don't know, man, as a PC gamer, I am absolutely tired of the nonsense that seems to go on with certain games where they release and just don't work. And I pick whatever card is best for my purposes, yeah? I buy high-end, which generally means I buy Nvidia. Nvidia has the fastest single GPU cards. I like single GPU because it's more reliable for my particular workflow. Dual GPU, which is basically SLI, or Crossfire, doesn't tend to work all that well for recording purposes. It can have some problems, so I want the most powerful single GPU card I can get. And maybe I get a second one just for gaming, and then I just disable one for recording, but at least I know that I've got the best I can get so I can record in the highest possible quality. But that's just my concern. I don't think that people should really be taking sides in the so-called graphics card war. They should simply be buying what is best for their budget based on what exactly they are looking for. Do they want something that's uber powerful? Do they want the best of the best and they're willing to pay a premium for that? Or do they want price performance? Because that war is a very close one and it's been going back and forth for the past 10 plus years, and that's good for the consumer. But when stuff like this happens, or you remember when Rage came out and it was broken on AMD cards, none of this is good for anybody. If this is going on purpose, then this is horrendous. I'm hoping it's just incompetence. I really, really do. Never attribute to malice that which can be adequately explained away by stupidity. Alright folks, that's me done for the day. That's also me done for the week. Thank you very much for watching the content patch. Please have a safe and wonderful weekend. A reminder, next week I will be traveling to Dallas for MLG Dallas. I will be away for a few days. That probably means content patch will take a little bit of a backseat. I will attempt to prepare some content prior to going away, but as always, I can't necessarily promise anything. I will be gone from the 14th of March through to the 18th, and then I'll be back home for a few days and then traveling out to PAX East. I'll give you a full update on what's going on there and as much information as possible closer to the time. Thanks a lot for watching. I really hope your weekend doesn't suck, and I will see you next time.